Welcome to Big Blend Radio with your hosts, Lisa and Nancy, editors of BigBlendMagazine.com.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to Big Blend Radio. Today, we're excited to welcome back Dr. Diane Dobry. Dobry. You got a new name, Diane. How about that? Hey, so I know, we met you through IFTWA, the International Food, Wine, Travel Writers Association, and you've been on our show a few times talking about Hungary. So you're a travel writer, a food writer, wine enthusiast, wine writer. You've dealt in importing Hungarian wines over to America. You love Hungary. We know that. You're the Hungarian Aquarian.com. And but you're also writing memoirs and books. So there's a lot going on. But I want to go to your last name. What is the cultural roots of Dobry? Yeah, since I got it wrong.
It's my ex-husband's name. It's Czech.
Okay.
And it means good. And so when I was having children, I had two boys, but people would say to me who knew, like, they spoke Polish, and they would say, if you have a girl, name it Jane Dobry, because Jane Dobry is how you say good morning or good day in Polish or Czech. But my maiden name is Hornbuckle, which is English, and my wine company was Christoph Wines, and that was based on my great grandparents who came from Hungary to the US, to Ithaca, New York, and they made wine, and my great grandfather worked at a baron's. He had been the wine taster, and he worked in the stable, so he had some kind of background in Hungarian wines. So I guess I kept the ball going, took the baton.
What led you to go to Hungary? Was it your family roots that led you there?
Well, interestingly, I had gone to, my first trip to Europe was I was a PR person at Columbia University's Teachers College, and one of the professors had a global health conference happening in Salzburg, Austria, and the place where they were doing it and staying was where Sound of Music was filmed, on the outside, the backyard of Sound of Music, where they came off the water and to the patio, and it's called something, I can't remember. I keep thinking Leonard, but it's not Leonard. Leopold Schran, the palace, and it's kind of well known for these conferences and seminars. So I had gone for that as my first. I was doing the PR for him as my first European trip, and I said, well, I'm not going home after 3 days in Europe. I'm going to get on a train and go to Vienna, which I did by myself. I didn't know much of what I was doing. When I was in Vienna, I met a family going to Budapest from Vienna, and I'm like, ooh, that's where my family's from, but I don't think I'll ever go there. I can't speak the language or anything. And then when I became a doctoral student, I was looking at television and how television can influence people's lifestyles. And I had read about how Western television coming into India had changed the way women used makeup and did their hair, and how they got tables and TVs, and it changed the whole culture. And I said, what kind of a culture can I look at that television would have changed? And I'm like, oh, Central Europe, whatever had been in the Soviet bloc. And so I chose Hungary to go to do this research. I met a guy in New York who was a bartender, and he was Hungarian, and we got to be friendly. We chatted and stuff, and he moved back to Hungary to find a wife and said, come and stay with my family. And it turned out that I did research on his whole family for like 6 weeks in a summer of 2004, watching TV. How often did they watch TV? And they really didn't watch TV all that much. But when they did, I wanted to know what they watched. And so I spent pretty much the summer doing that. And then I got into this wine business, kind of came into it, and started going there like every year, tasting wine, and spent a lot
what
of
a rough life.
it over. What?
I said, what a rough life.
Yeah, it was fun. It was fun, but it was scary because I really didn't know how the alcohol business worked, and it's quite regulated. So, but I thought I'm gonna make lemonade out of, the lemons. I didn't succeed at keeping it going because I had to shut it down in 2009 when the
Mm.
housing bubble burst. But I said I'm gonna write a book. So I started writing a book about the basics of Hungarian wine and the history. And someone suggested I take my own story of becoming a wine importer and kind of putting that in between. So that's what I'm kind of working on now,
Mm.
is doing that. So
So how did the food, wine travel writing come in? Was it from traveling to Hungary, or were you always writing? Because I know that you also worked in a newspaper.
I worked at yeah, I had been for years the PR person, director of communications at Columbia University, but I was studying international studies, and I had also taught, and I was doing director of communications up in upstate New York at a SUNY ag and tech school. So I taught about wines to them, and I had an international online class with a Hungarian wine professor, and we taught the Hungarians about New York State wines and the New York
Mm.
State students about Hungarian wines. We did a tasting 8 o'clock in the morning in New York, and then I took them on a trip, a study abroad trip for a week, for 10 days after the class was over. So that was kind of how I got involved in doing a little bit more with teaching. And then but I wanted to get into IFTWA, but you had to have certain number of articles written that were travel writing. I moved to Florida when I became unemployed again, and I kind of knocked on the door of this newspaper and kept writing about their agriculture because they knew I had agricultural background. And then during the summer, the editor said, we usually write about education, but we have this empty space. You can write about some day trips. And then I said, well, I'm going to Hungary. And he said, okay, write 6 stories about Hungary. And that got me into IFTWA because I had enough travel stories from that newspaper. I was just a
Wow.
stringer, but I was
Yeah,
I kind of
it's all
finagled
the
my way.
yeah. So, well, communications is communications, whether it's on the PR side or the writing side, you're always in it, obviously, and then doing the books, because I know you're also writing memoirs and you're doing your family history stories too, right? So books are definitely
Yeah.
a big part of what's happening.
Right. Well, the Hungary, I am doing a memoir about my time in Hungary, but I think I'm gonna have to split it up because they're different themes, and that's
Mhm.
called Getting Hungary. And the first one will be Who's the Pest in Budapest, and then after that, I have I was in hospitals because I broke my arm and had all these operations. So I was gonna talk about that, healing in Hungary, and but then I I inherited my great aunt's diaries from the 30s to the 40s when she was going from 15 years old to mid 20s, and I just was like, I kind of would post it to Facebook and say, oh, look
Mhm.
what my aunt wrote, and people were like, oh, we want more, we want more. So I posted it, and they were like following the story. So I said, well, I think I'll turn it into a book about her life. And when I was a master's student, I had done some interviews with my grandmother,
Mm.
the Christoph grandmother, and, and she told me all about her parents, how they came from Hungary and lived in Ithaca, and that they lived on farms and what she did as a child. So I just took that and kind of transcribed it, and I talked to the Historical Society up in Ithaca and got some photos, and I have some photos from her, and I'm putting together a small book, I guess, like a chapbook, 50
Oh, cool.
pages or so. And I think I'm going to try to do some talks and sell some of those books through the Historical Society, and the same with my aunt's great aunt's diaries. Is I'm working with the Historical Society and Library where she grew up.
Oh, wow. That's really cool. So history is a big thing. So you've got food, wine, travel, Europe is a big
Memoir
deal.
and
And yeah, and
family
history.
history. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, family history is fascinating. And you think about what people, I was thinking about that today about like music and things, about how I'm so into roots music because it tells a story. It's tells the history of people, right? And what they went through,
Yeah.
as pioneers or as slaves or, just all different walks of life, really. So I think it's interesting to go back and remind us of what we think is so glitzy and glamourful. Like that wouldn't happen without all these people before us. So
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. And a lot of times my aunt in her diaries, she'll write what she was listening to on the radio, and I'll go and listen to the song to get a sense of what it was feeling like. And I feel myself in her time frame when I'm
Mm,
writing about her. It's really interesting to kind of feel immersed in it.
wow, wow. So now tell everybody you've got three websites, three blogs that
Okay.
people can follow. So
Okay.
Hungarian Aquarian, tell everybody about that.
Okay. Well,
Because this
Hungarian
goes on the
Aquarian.
other side of everything we're talking about.
Yeah, well, actually, the first one about Hungary is called Getting Hungary, and it's gettinghungary.com, and that has some blog posts, some podcasts. I'm trying to get more podcast guests. They're kind of hesitant if they're living in Hungary. They're like, "Oh, my English isn't good." I'm like, "Yes, it's good. I wouldn't ask you if it wasn't." But
Mm,
then I have and I have a Facebook page, Getting Hungry, which is where I curate stuff. I post about events happening in Hungary and holidays and stuff. And that's kind of a travel focused and tourism of Hungary. Then I have Hungarian Aquarian, which was kind of the first. And I had done my dissertation on death and the afterlife and how people, because they couldn't find answers basically either in their faith, what happens when they die. It's more of like, oh, well, just believe us, this is what it is. Or science was like, well, we don't look at that, we only look at the body and what's
mm,
physical. And so I was reading that a lot of people will go to shows, TV shows like Ghost Hunters, medium TV shows, and people's personal encounters and what they've encountered. And so I did that, my dissertation on that, and created this website, Hungarian Aquarian, to have some of my excerpts from my dissertation, kind of talking about that. And then a lot of podcasts about like crystals and astrology and death in the afterlife kind of beliefs, communication with the dead, experiences, intentions like manifestation. So that's the podcast is called Dying to Know.
I'm
And
dying to know.
then the blog is Knocking on Heaven's Door. And then there was an astrology column that just was so all encompassing that I couldn't get a lot of my own other projects done. So what I do is I have Hungarian Aquarian on Facebook, where I kind of put updates for what the major astrologers are saying online, and I kind of summarize it. And sometimes I'll post their videos or
Hmm.
their websites. And I'm trying to figure out what to do with that column. I may just take the group of, like, say, all of July, all of August, and just create a column of that, so you can go back if you want. But mostly it's about those kinds of topics.
That's
And
cool.
then a
I
third,
think that's something where dying to know is a good title too for your podcast because I'll go down the rabbit hole of what happens to people when they die and come back. I'm fascinated. Like I've got a
I've
whole
been
thing on that.
watching
That's
those. Yeah.
72 hours. I've got professors, two of their books, of his books about the actual documentation of these stories. And
I've been reading those since the 80s because I was always so afraid of death. And that's actually what helped me get through, like reading about people's near-death experiences.
it sounds interesting. I just kind of want to be able to go back and forth. That's the thing. It's like it feels like you buzz off onto this new thing, but I want to be able to. I want to be a ghost. You know what I mean?
You want to haunt people.
I want to hang out. I don't want, it's like, oh, you can't go to this country because they're having a war. Well, don't want that. I want to be able to go. I don't, I'm
Yeah.
one of these, like, I wish we didn't have borders or passports and all of that. I just want to be able to be free to go wherever the heck I want. I don't want much. I just want to be able to do what I want when I and when I die, I
That's
don't
my
like this
goal.
finality of like that's it. I just
Yeah.
don't. I kind of want to be able, and I don't believe in like doesn't make sense to me scientifically that we just cut it all off and it's dead. Energy
Right.
doesn't die. And I do believe there is that, I think the science and the cloth are coming together a little bit more than they were 10 years ago, 10, 15 years ago. It's getting a little bit better. Um, but we'll see. We'll see how, I don't know. The
It's
world's
funny,
kind of
yeah.
weird right now.
They seem actually when I did my research that science was they would have these arguments because I looked at web discussions and the
Mm.
scientists would say that that's never going to happen and the very very religious would be like, well, wait till you die, you'll see. And I'm
Well,
like,
like, how do you know? Yeah.
exactly. So that's why a lot of people said they wanted a safe place to be online, and they watched television, these reality shows that were like, they weren't like fiction like vampires and
Yeah.
stuff. It was more like mediums or ghost hunters or people who just like ghostly encounters, I think was one, or where they would just tell their stories like, this is what happened to me. And
Mm.
it was pretty. And then the ones with the near death experience was I Survived Beyond and Back, where they told about what happened when they
If I get on
died.
YouTube and I see one, someone has
Yeah,
to
me
come and
too. I
pull
watch
me.
one every
Nancy,
day.
Nancy has to get me away because I have work to do. And it's like, oh man, this is like, they feel really good out there. They're having a
Yeah,
good time. They're happy. They don't want to come back. They're like, hey,
right.
no, they'll understand. No, they won't. You need to go back, to reality. But so that's fascinating I love that you do so many different things. You're part of the big blend, right? It's
That's right.
perfect, but that's a good thing. And then you've got another blog, A Little
Um,
Dazed.
Discovery Days, DAZE, was based on, I had a Tumblr blog called Diane's Discoveries, and I started
Oh, I
writing
remember,
about
yeah.
places and stuff. And I thought, well, let me turn it into a website, and I would have, sometimes I'll put just me talking about something that I like, my favorite YouTube channels or some books I've read that I think are interesting, or thoughts. I did a video of my brother. He's a home coffee roaster. So it wasn't so much of a
Oh,
video, it
wow.
was more of a podcast, but then I had some video and photos of how he does his home coffee roasting. And that got pretty much a lot of attention. But I also did on National Hedgehog Day. One of my friends in England is a hedgehog foster parent. So she came on and talked about what it meant to be a foster mother for hedgehogs in England. And so I wanted to
Cool.
do more of that because I could do more like Florida stuff where I am now, or I lived in Long Island and I like the Hamptons and Sag Harbor, or upstate New York, and I could do something about that. So Discovery Days is more about kind of eclectic stuff that
Hmm.
and then cooking. I always have like cooking videos of me cooking something. I'm not the pretty girl that does her hair and makeup. Sometimes I'm just in a t-shirt and I'm like, okay, this is what I'm cooking today.
I remember in COVID, you were giving us all cooking lessons and you were doing some Hungarian recipes and soup
Right.
recipes. Remember you doing something with carrots. I'm like, I didn't know you could do
Carrot
that with
soup.
carrots. Yeah. So I remember that. But I love that you're so multifaceted in your interests. And it's fascinating to me too that you tend to go to TV, like this dissertation that you did, but
Hmm.
how that really changed everything. And radio did the same thing, you know.
Right.
Actually, we're recording this on, well, no, tomorrow's radio day. Tomorrow's the day that the radio was invented, but not when this airs. So anyway,
Really?
just when we're recording, yeah. And radio changed the world. TV changed the world.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't think podcasting will ever get as big as that. I mean, it's huge, right? But it wouldn't be there without radio and it wouldn't be there without TV,
Right.
and the
And
internet
YouTube.
changed. The internet is up there.
Right.
So, how it changed everything. But still, we went and put, oh, let's get TV on the internet. Let's get radio on the internet. So how we have podcasting, right? And so when we started our podcasting, our show's Big Blend Radio, we weren't, podcasting wasn't even a word. It was the beginning of it, and we didn't even like the word. So we didn't even want to use it. We're like, no, we're Big Blend Radio or the Blend Radio, Champagne Sundays radio show. Like, we didn't want to use the word podcast. We're just like, that's not.
I had started off with Blog Talk Radio. I was doing my dissertation. I had New Age Cafe, and I would interview astrologers, and I interviewed a guy who wrote Everyone is Psychic, and he talked about how he gives lessons and what people can do to tap into their psychic abilities and stuff. So I tried to do that while I was doing my dissertation. I figured if I'm here, I can start trying to get into that kind of thing. Then I went to Hungary for a year and couldn't do it from there.
We did, that's where we started, was on Blog Talk. When they first, I think we were like, when they were 6 months old, we started with them. It was cool.
It was fun. It was fun.
We were Southwestern in coverage. We were Southwest Blend at that time. Went from being the Blend to Southwest Blend, the Blend being San Diego. And then all these people are like, well, you can't do San Diego without Arizona. I'm like, okay, I'll cross the border, no problem. And so we went to Southwest Blend. And then when you could do Blog Talk and interview people around the world, and we had stopped printing our magazine because we were print as well. And at that point we stopped printing. We're like, well, we can do anything around the world now. Let's go for it. Why limit? And that's the truth. Why limit? You can have different niches and everything, but everything's all connected. It really is.
Yeah.
So it's
that's why I wanted to do, I like to have the social media with the website, but I do like podcasting because sometimes I'll interview authors, like on Hungarian and Aquarian. I interviewed some people who wrote books about their experiences. And I was trying to do a little bit more of that with Discovery Days, but I'm figuring it out, because I also like the idea of doing newsletters like Substack or something. And I'm like, well, I have a lot of retirement ideas, and should I do a senior focus? I mean, I'm like all over the place, but I like to put my hand in a lot of different, places. So pots.
We shouldn't be limited. We should not be limited in life. The world's our oyster, right? So I love that. And it's always good to chat with you. And we look forward to having you back on the show. We're going to be doing a lot more panel discussions coming up this fall and next year. And so I'm excited. And we'll be talking about death. I'm excited.
It's coming up the time.
That sounds good. The death season is coming up.
That's right. Death and ghosts.
I know, we're excited about that. It's our
I always say I'm the wine and spirits. The wine and spirits.
Perfect. That's right. We'll do a show on that, and then obviously the holidays and everything, and talk travel. So we're looking forward to that. And also, I will have everyone the show notes, whether you're listening on YouTube, Facebook, or Apple, Google, wherever, all the show notes will have all the links to Dr. Diane's website. So you can connect with her over there. And you can also find her expert page on blendradioandtv.com. Keep up with us at bigblendradio.com. Thank you all for listening. Thank you, Diane. We'll see you around.
Great. Thanks for having me.